Number 10. Project Pegasus and the Chrononauts. While that may sound like a sweet alt-rock band, Project Pegasus didn't have anything to do with music, but with moving through time. Seattle attorney Andrew Basiago has been making claims since 2004 that when he was younger, starting at the age of 7, he participated in the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, Project Pegasus, focusing on teleportation and time travel. He and a few others were chosen at a young age because, allegedly, children could adapt well to the strains of moving between past, present, and future. Along with his fellow Chrononauts, love the name, he adventured throughout time to places like the Gettysburg Address in 1863 and to Ford's Theater to witness the assassination of President Lincoln, quote, 5 or 6 times. I don't know why he was so obsessed with Lincoln. He was allegedly even captured in a photograph. He claims that he witnessed 8 different time travel technologies throughout the course of the project, and that most were based on engineering specs and sketches by Nikola Tesla. And if one person was to come up with teleportation or time travel, I think it would be Tesla himself. Pure genius, that one. Andrew even met himself a few times in the past, and surprisingly didn't cause a paradox. His claims are supported by others who say that the Defense Department has had time travel capabilities for over 40 years, but has kept it secret. Andrew Basiago also ran for president in 2016, but we all know how that turned out. Maybe he should have used time travel to change the outcome.
In our 9th spot, we have Vladimir Putin. It turns out that the president of Russia is a time traveler. Take a look at these photos. First, we got a Russian soldier from 1920, and he looks identical to Putin. Then we have another Russian soldier from 1941, and he also looks like a young Putin, who is pictured on the far right. Too eerie. Either he's immortal, or he's a time traveler.
Number 8. Guardian Angel. In 2019, a video surfaced of a shop owner in Turkey tending to some of his merchandise. Very normal, nothing to see here, until a man calmly walks up behind him and casually taps him on the shoulder as he walks by, causing the shop owner to turn around. But not a moment later, a gate from a large truck driving by swings open, nearly killing him. And if it wasn't for this mystery man's actions, the shop owner would surely be dead. The truck driver returned to apologize for what had happened, but the mysterious stranger was nowhere to be found. Some commenters believe that this man had come back from the future to save lives, perhaps not just the shopkeep's. That's the only one that we caught on camera. Others have noticed that the two men look similar, even their outfits aren't far off, implying that maybe it's the same man, or their son somehow come back from the future. Though it looks like it was filmed on a potato, so who can be sure. Number 7. Rudolph Fentz. The story of Rudolph Fentz is one that has been hotly debated amongst the time travel investigation community. In 1951, people in Times Square in New York City noticed a man suddenly appear, wearing 19th century clothing. He appeared to be disoriented and confused, and after running into an intersection in a daze, he was hit by a car and fatally injured. When his body was inspected, they found strange items in his possession that appeared to have come from another time. A copper token for a beer worth 5 cents bearing the name of a saloon which was unknown even to older residents of the area, a bill for the care of a horse and the washing of a carriage made by a stable that was not listed in any address book, old banknotes, business cards with his name and address, as well as a letter sent to him postmarked in 1876. These items in his attire have led people to believe that Rudolph was a man from the past, probably from 1876, who unfortunately slipped through time to a place that he didn't or couldn't comprehend, and his confusion ultimately killed him. Tragic story, really. Number 6. Bob White. In 2003, Dave Hill, along with countless others, received an email from Bob White. Normally, a spam email would just get ignored by Dave, but this one was too strange to pass up. The email explained that he needed help from a time traveler, or any alien disguised as human, because his life had been severely tampered with, and he needed, quote, temporal reversion to correct it. He resorted to the internet to find help.
You ever come across anything like time travel?
He asked the people receiving the message for strange mechanical parts that didn't exist, like an AMD dimensional warp generator module containing the GRC79 induction motor, or an Acme 5X24 series time transducing capacitor with built-in temporal displacement. I don't even think a Time Lord could help him find these ridiculous sounding parts. But Dave Hill decided to have some fun and responded to his message saying that he could get what he needed. And he even sent an old hard drive motor to Bob, claiming that it was a warp generator, which Bob gratefully accepted, believing it was the part he needed.
It's a time machine, Napoleon. You bought it online.
You're right.
It works, Napoleon. You don't even know.
It was later revealed that Bob White was a man named Robbie Tadino, a 22-year-old from Massachusetts who admitted to sending over 100 million messages for help out into cyberspace, and truly believed, and still does believe, that he was affected by time travel and needs to make a machine to fix it. The story he describes and the machine he seems intent on building is so specific that many people are convinced he has met time travelers or aliens and is really trying to recreate their technology with human things that just don't exist yet. Let's just hope he gets it all sorted out. Number 5. The Philadelphia Experiment and Montauk Project. I've talked about these before in a previous video, but they require another mention here as there are so many accounts of what happened that it's overwhelming. Allegedly, there was a secret military operation being performed in 1943 at the shipyard aboard the USS Eldridge. The experiment involved cloaking, not time travel, strangely enough, but when they attempted to conceal the ship with the technology they developed, the ship did indeed disappear, but that was because it was moved 10 minutes into the past, which reportedly caused some of the crew to go mad. And later, another secret military operation called the Montauk Project was tasked with creating gates for time travel, using psychic links from children who are much more attuned to these kinds of things apparently, and can open their minds more, so the witnesses claim. One of these many gates that were opened apparently led back to the USS Eldridge during the 10 minutes of time dilation, but these two experiments are linked by one person who has since shared their experience. Number 4. Al Bielek. Al Bielek was a Navy officer aboard the USS Eldridge during the Philadelphia experiment, also known as Project Rainbow, and when the time jump occurred, he wasn't sent 10 minutes into the past. He claims that he was sent forward to the year 2137. When he was rescued from the water, he was taken to a futuristic hospital where he was treated for radiation sickness they say he developed from the time jump. He described major differences in the world, the coastlines being swallowed by the oceans, worldwide government collapse followed by the rise of a system that allowed everyone to get what they need when they needed it, for free, by abolishing the concept of money. He was eventually sent back and continued to live his life, burdened by what he had learned, with few believing him, until he was later recruited by the Montauk Project as their program director for the psychics involved with creating the time tunnels, which he used to investigate as far back as 100,000 BC and as far forward as the year 6037. Of course, he maintains that the government has done everything in their power to stop him from revealing all of this, disavowing him once he went public with his stories. Do you believe his story? Let me know in the comments. Number 3. Time traveling Trump. Now, I don't like talking about this former first family very much unless it has to do with all the current investigations, but some of these coincidences are just a little too eerie, though I do believe that they are just that. This conspiracy theory came from a discovery on the Library of Congress website, where readers found books from the 1890s, one called Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, and another called 1900, or The Last President. The first is about a young man named Baron Trump, who discovers portals for time travel, and at one point in the book he was actually guided by a man named Dawn. In the second book, an odd choice for president wins the election, and has someone with the last name Pence in their cabinet. Even the address where New York's Trump Tower now stands was mentioned. Personally, I believe that the former president's son Barron was named after the character in the book, not the other way around, but the connections found are certainly interesting. Number 2. Mike Markham. In early 1995, 21-year-old Mike Madman Markham attempted to build a time machine on his front porch. Of course, it didn't work, but that didn't deter him, and he kept working towards his goal. He later stole the expensive parts that he needed and caused a bit of trouble doing so. Then, after he got out of jail, he went on a radio program called Coast to Coast AM to talk about the machine he was building, saying that he was nearly finished and would be testing it soon, even giving out his phone number so that anyone with knowledge on the subject could help him out. Then he disappeared off the face of the earth. No one could find him for months, after which he said he was going to travel back in time only with his cell phone, and later that same week, an old story was dug up from the 1930s of a man who was found dead on a beach in California, encapsulated in some sort of metal tube with a strange device, the description of which matches that of a cell phone from the 1990s. Could that be the eventual fate of Mike? And finally, our number 1, under the sink. In 2006, a Swedish man by the name of Håkan Nordqvist was fixing a leak from a cracked pipe under his sink when he noticed something strange, a bright light that seemed to beckon him in a way. He crawled in and suddenly appeared somewhere completely different, but he wasn't alone. He claims that he met someone there, or rather, he met himself. He claimed that he ran into himself, but a future version, perhaps around 70 years old. And since he knew no one would believe him, he pulled out his cell phone and filmed the meeting. The two men do look remarkably similar, but the clincher for this whole story is when they rolled up their sleeves and revealed that they both have the exact same tattoo, in the exact same place. We all know that one of the main rules of time travel is to never interact with yourself, so we're lucky he didn't cause a paradox and rip a hole in time and space.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Green People. Apparently in the 12th century, a guy and girl were found in Woolpit, England. They were alone and didn't speak English or any recognizable language for that matter. But that wasn't the strange part. Their skin was green, yes. Is this what that 90s song was based off of? I'm blue, if I were green I would die. Because coincidentally one of them did die. Dun dun dun. They were discovered by a villager, and pretty soon after the guy passed away. The girl eventually learned English and was able to speak about where she came from. She said she came from a twilight-covered place called St. Martin's Land, and that one day she and her brother were taking care of their father's sheep when they found a cave. They went into the cave, and after walking for a long time, they suddenly found themselves in Woolpit. That's pretty wild. And you know, I bet you they did slip through time from another dimension or maybe even another world because, well, humans aren't green, so that definitely screams aliens to me. Anyone thinking what I'm thinking? This is how the reptilian race started. Got it, got it.
Number 9. Vrillon Ashtar Radio Incident. On Saturday, November 26, 1977, in the southern United Kingdom, a mysterious voice interrupted a news broadcast and gave strange commands and predictions of the future. Accompanied by unsettling pulsing noises and echoes, the electronic-sounding voice claimed to be Vrillon, a representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command. Aliens or future beings sent to deliver a warning message that humans must denounce and remove all of their weapons of evil in order for an age of peace and prosperity to come to fruition, the age of Aquarius. If humans do not comply and turn from their evil ways, humanity will fall. Here's a little clip.
This is the voice of Allah, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you.
Though the message is foreboding and super creepy, this messenger from the future actually makes some good points and gives some decent advice, like have no fear, seek only to know yourselves and live in harmony with the ways of your planet Earth. Seems like they were listening to the hippies at the time, and they had the right idea. After taking control of the station, they bid farewell and said they would leave our plane of existence, leaving us with their final words, "May you be blessed by the supreme love and truth of the cosmos." Aw. Thanks, Vrillon.
In our number 8 spot, we have the Old Hotel. It was the year 1979, and 4 friends by the names of Jeff, Pauline, Len, and Cynthia were traveling through France when they got tired and decided to stay in a hotel for the night. They found a hotel that was ridiculously cheap in comparison to the rest of the hotels on the street, so it was a no-brainer. The only thing is, the hotel was particularly odd. Not enough for them to go somewhere else, but still it had wooden latches on the doors, no locks, and the windows didn't have glass, they were just thick shutters. What? In the morning, when they were eating breakfast, they noticed that there were armed police officers in old-looking uniforms. So old, they had capes. Without thinking too much into it, they later left and went on with their day. When they were on their return journey, they wanted to stay at the hotel again, except the hotel wasn't there. After doing some research, they discovered later on that those uniforms that the police officers were wearing were actually from 1905. Whoa. So they definitely time traveled without even realizing it. I want to experience this. If I could have this experience though, I would probably want to be transported to the 70s though, you know, disco, peace, hippies. What more do you need? In our number 7 spot, we have John Titor. Obs, I couldn't make a time traveler list without the famous John Titor. John Titor is probably one of the most talked about time travelers around the world, famously known for popping into our time in November of 2000 and chatting up a time travel forum. He claimed to be from the year 2036, and he said that he was on a mission to retrieve an IBM computer from 1960 1975, but wanted to pop into the year 2000 for, personal reasons. And he said that since he was here, he wanted to warn everyone about the crappy future that was up ahead. How nice of him. A quick World War III in 2015 and a full-blown civil war by 2012 in the US. Well, perhaps he was, 5 years or so off, but some people say that because he revealed info that it actually changed the future and therefore the timeline, would be off. Apparently he was so detailed that it was hard not to believe him, but anyways, super interesting to ponder over. Do you think John Titor was real? Let me know in the comment section below. In our number 6 spot, we have Back to the Past. Apparently in 1969, 2 men were driving on a southwestern Louisiana highway when they saw an old car in the distance. The car began to get closer to them and they saw that it looked like it was slowing down and perhaps the driver needed a boost. The men pulled up beside the car and looked in to see a woman and her child looking at them in 1940s attire and looking quite scared and shocked as they looked back at them. They gestured to her to pull over so they could help her, and so they both did. When they got out of the car though and looked back at the woman, the car had vanished. Okay, did they travel to the past or did the woman travel to the future? I don't know. Is this what Back to the Future was based on? I think yes. In our number 5 spot, we have Montauk time travel. According to author Preston Nichols, there is a secret time travel base in Montauk, New York. Preston wrote the book The Montauk Project in the 90s, and he claimed that in the 1980s he reclaimed some memories of working on the project. He says that they experimented on young humans and one human had psychic abilities. He also said they created a time portal to 1943. A portal that specifically opened on the USS Eldridge, the subject of the Philadelphia experiment. Apparently in World War II, the US performed a series of tests to cloak its workers with essentially an invisibility cloak of some sort. Apparently in October they succeeded, but there was a bit of a side effect. The Eldridge crew members went insane after traveling back in time for 10 minutes. Apparently the workers were brainwashed afterwards and their memories were wiped. Wow, well honestly, I maybe believe it. If the army had cell phones in the 60s, most likely the government created a time traveling device in the 80s to go back to the 40s, right? It's possible. In our number 4 spot, we have Jopher Vorin. This story is super interesting and apparently there is no doubt that he was real, just that he might have been a little crazy. But you can decide. Allegedly in 1980, there was a man by the name of Jopher Vorin who was found in Germany. He apparently spoke little German, which of course made him difficult to understand. He claimed that he was from a place called Lexaria and spoke the languages Lexarian and Abramian. He said he was looking for his long-lost brother, but had to stop here as he was shipwrecked. He claimed that the world was made up of 5 sections: Sakaria, Aflar, Aslar, Oslar, and Euflar. Honestly, if this guy's story isn't real, I'm sad that he didn't become an author because that's some imagination. In our number 3 spot, we have the missing car. Okay, this one either confirms that this guy time traveled or that maybe we should be careful with who we let be doctors? One or the two. Allegedly in 1935, Dr. E.G. Moon was leaving the home of one of his patients in Kent, England, when he noticed that his car was gone. Also, the driveway was a lot rougher than he remembered. All of a sudden, he saw a man wearing several capes, a top hat, and had a large weapon with him. The man seemed to look like he was perhaps from the 19th century. He turned to go back inside the house when he looked back and he noticed that the pavement was normal again and his car was back in the place he had left it. Coming up at our number 2 spot, we have the bookshop. Apparently in 1996, a police officer and his wife were in Liverpool, England shopping. The police officer's wife went into a bookshop and he decided to go to another store to get a CD. As he began walking to the bookstore, suddenly he noticed that everything became quiet. And then, everything around him looked like it was from the 1950s. He was suddenly standing in the middle of the street and a van honked and swerved around him. He tried to walk back to the bookshop, but it wasn't there. In its place was a woman's store by the name of Cripps. He decided to go inside, but as soon as he did, he was in 1996 again. He later found out that Cripps did exist, but closed in the 50s. Cool! This one has me a believer. What about you? In our number 1 spot, of course, we have the man from Taured. Yeah, this story is one of my faves, so I had to make it first. This is another story about a man who is from a place that doesn't seem to exist in our dimension. In 1954, there was a man who was stopped at customs in Tokyo, Japan, as he declared that he was from a country that doesn't exist. He showed his passport and stamps to prove that he was indeed from a country called Taured, and it was located between Spain and France. They asked him if he meant Andorra. He got, angry and said, yes, the location was right, but Taured had existed for at least 1,000 years. He had never heard of Andorra before. He was then put up in a hotel room for the night while the police investigated further. His room was being heavily guarded, and that is why it was a complete shock to find that by the next morning, he had vanished. Dun dun dun.
Starting off this countdown, we have the photographic evidence. A couple of years ago, a man named Edward came forward claiming that he was a time traveler from the year 5000. He even came with evidence. Now, he used a fake name and had his identity hidden so people weren't gonna come after him. So according to Edward, he claims he was part of a top secret experiment that took place in 2004. During the test, he was successfully transported in time. He was taken to LA 5,000 years in the future. And it's not looking too good. He said, and I quote, "I was standing on a huge wooden platform, and after I realized it was the same city, Los Angeles, but underwater." This man's claims were backed up with evidence. He took a photo of LA underwater. I don't even know what to think. Either he's good at Photoshop or he's actually a time traveler. I just thought that the water would be way more polluted than that. Like, that's far too clear, It's a little sketchy.
In our number 9 spot, we have Marie Antoinette. I can't say her name without trying to pronounce it the French way. Allegedly, in 1901, 2 professors time traveled. These professors were from St. Hugh's College in Oxford, England, and they were on a trip to visit Versailles. Versailles was once home to the famous ruler Marie Antoinette, who is known for telling all her poor subjects to just eat cake. Let them eat cake, she said. Anyways, the professors Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain were walking around the palace when the most unusual thing happened. They were suddenly inches away from Marie Antoinette. Dumbfounded as Marie was beheaded in the 1700s, it's pretty safe to say they did not expect to see Marie and all the other people who were in 1700s clothing who just appeared out of nowhere. Apparently, they all disappeared when a tour guide approached the professors. The 2 women were highly respected and no one believes that they would make up a story like that. So I guess we must conclude that they were telling the truth. Pretty cool.
Moving on at number 8, we have the TikTok time traveler. Now, I talked about this case briefly before, and I'm throwing it on today's list because it's the most recent case of time travel. Basically, a guy named Javier claims that he is a time traveler who is now stuck in the year 2027. The scariest part is that the entire human race is wiped out by then. On his TikTok page, he posts videos of him wandering the streets of Spain alone. He has gone to stadiums, airports, police stations, hospitals, restaurants, and malls. No one is there except himself, which is crazy because normally those places would be packed with people, but they aren't. So here's the thing. Either he's a time traveler and was sent to the future to warn us, or he's somehow faking it. But a number of people have analyzed his videos. Some people believe he edits everyone out of the video. Sure, it's possible to edit objects and people out of videos, but it's harder to do with multiple people in the shot, in which there would be, and it's harder if the people are moving around, which they would be. Another theory is that these videos were pre-filmed, that they were filmed during the pandemic when they were under lockdown and had a curfew. But in order to prove that that's not the case, he gets his followers to tell him where he should go next. He then will go to that specific place and prove no one is there. The freakiest part is he has gone to hospitals. If this was filmed during the pandemic, the hospitals would be filled with people. But when he walks around, no one, and I mean no one, is there. Maybe this is real and we should take him seriously. Who knows, but believe what you want to believe. In our 7th spot, we have the 800-year-old cell phone. In 2016, a group of researchers unearthed an ancient-looking cell phone in Austria. The phone is covered in cuneiform writing, which dates back to thousands of years ago, making this object thousands of years old. But obviously, we didn't have phones back then, when this clearly looks like it was modeled after a Nokia phone. Alien hunters believe that it comes from an advanced civilization that has come to Earth. Others believe that this object is proof of time travel. What's even more weird is that I can't seem to find much about this phone online, so it looks like no one has debunked it yet. Maybe it's real then, who knows? In our 6th spot, we have the man named Noah. Back in 2018, a man came forward claiming that he was a time traveler from the year 2030. He called himself Noah. Obviously, it's not his real name, and he sat down for a television interview to share with the world what life is like in 2030. But of course, his face and voice were distorted to protect his identity. He said that he can't let anyone know who he really is. Basically, he said that he will be killed for speaking the truth about time travel. He goes on to prove that he's a real time traveler by getting an x-ray of his hand. Upon doing so, it's revealed that there's a weird device implemented in his wrist. That's what Noah says is what helps him when he time travels. Not only that, but he underwent a lie detector test and he passed it, showing that his claims were real. Now, what did he say is in store for the future? Well, since this occurred in 2018, he said that in 2019 it will be filled with more UFO sightings, which, yes, that was true. He also claims that in 2028, that's when aliens will come down to Earth, and that's also the year that the government will reveal that time travel is real. That's pretty intense if you ask me. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Antikythera mechanism. In 1900s, a team of divers exploring the Greek island of Antikythera made a fascinating discovery. They came across an ancient shipwreck. The ship was filled with statues, jewelry, coins, pottery, you name it. They were all like, booyah, jackpot. As they continued searching the ship though, they came across this weird object. It was a blob of corroded bronze and wood. 2 years later, an archaeologist decided to examine this and discovered it was an astronomical clock. But the items came from ancient Greece and clocks hadn't been invented then. This item was in similar size to a mantle clock, and the bits of wood fragments on it suggest that it was probably in a wooden case. They also believe the case would have had like a circular face or rotating hands. There was also a knob on the side, and the mechanism could rotate forwards and backwards. Needless to say, it was a fairly complex object for that time period, so some believe that it was left by a time traveler. If not, then what could this device be, and how come it was so advanced for its time? In our 4th spot, we have the year 3207.
Quote was time machine. They took me to a room filled by many kinds of displays, gadgets, wires that I had never ever seen. The head of project came to me and told all about that mystical project.
A couple of years ago, an unidentified Greek man came forward saying that he traveled in time to the year 3207. He claims that he was shot forward in time and spent 2 days in the year 3207 as part of a top secret military program. He was paid $100,000 to do so.
That after some minutes they would send me to the year 3207. As I understood, I was kinda laboratory mouse for them, you know. But the money and career that I was suggested were worthy for it.
He claims that in the future, the buildings were massive, triple the size that they are today. He also says that there were flying cars and that there was strange colored grass. It wasn't green, but a deep purple. And lastly, he said that aliens, humans, big animals, and robots were all walking together down the street. That's pretty interesting, not gonna lie. Don't know if I believe that guy, but some people do. I mean, he also showed photographic evidence, but claims that the photos got a bit distorted while going through the whole time travel process. To me, they kind of just look like bad Photoshop, but you decide. In our third spot, we have Paul Dienach. Now, if you haven't heard about this case before, then you're in for a shock. In 1921, a man named Paul Dienach, a Swiss-Australian teacher, slipped into a coma for about a year. For that year, he claimed that he went to the year 3096, where he switched consciousness with a man named Andrew Northman. One minute he was in a coma, next he's inside Andrew's body speaking a foreign language. For that year, he was living as Andrew. Paul was so scared to tell anyone of this experience, so he just wrote it in his diary and kept it a secret. However, just before he passed away, he gave his diary to one of his students to translate, and that's when it was revealed that he had somehow time traveled to the future. It's pretty insane. Could he be telling the truth, or was it all just a coma dream? In our second spot, we have the time-traveling murderer. Okay, this next story is going to leave you baffled. Back in 2014, a woman was found dead in London. It was clearly a murder. Thankfully, her attacker's DNA was found all over her body. Upon doing a forensics test, they got a match. But here's the thing, the supposed attacker was found dead a full 3 weeks before her victim. So how is it possible for her to kill someone when she had already died? So people think that the killer was a time traveler, and that days before her own death, she went a couple weeks into the future to kill this woman. I don't even know. It's just an insane case, if you ask me. And in our number one spot today, we had the London Hammer. Back in 1936 Texas, a man named Max Hahn and his wife were out for a walk when they stumbled upon this odd rock with a tool sticking directly out of it. This is what is now called the London Hammer, or the London Artifact. It was discovered to be part of a hammer that was trapped inside a rock that dates back to being over 400 million years old. Clearly back then they did not have hammers, so how the heck did a modern day human-made tool date back to a time where humans weren't even around? Theory goes that it was dropped by a time traveler, but I want to know who would go that far back in time. Let me know in the comments below, would you rather travel to the past or the future?
Number 10. Sir Victor Goddard. This story really freaks me out. Sir Victor Goddard was a wing commander in 1935 and he was making a trip over to an airbase in Drem, Scotland. Little did he know that this routine trip would change his life forever. As he was flying over the base, he took in the rough condition it was in. The fields were unkept with grass cracking through the tarmac and cattle had begun invading to graze. Then suddenly the weather took a miserable turn and in order to prevent an accident, he decided to make for a landing at the base. But as he got closer and closer to landing, the rain began to let up and the sun broke through the clouds. Suddenly he saw a flurry of mechanics in clean and tidy blue uniforms working diligently on yellow planes. Usually the mechanics at the time formerly wore khaki uniforms, so the blue was a bit of a shock. Additionally, they were working on yellow planes instead of silver. Goddard left shaking his head to remove whatever fever dream he was having, only to revisit the exact moment when he visited the site again 4 years later. He saw the exact same thing, blue uniforms, yellow planes, and had to deal with quite a fierce bit of deja vu. Ever since this story came to light, it's not hard to believe he traveled into the future, or back in time. Number 9. Greta Thunberg's doppelganger. What doesn't this girl do? First, she takes on the world's global environmental issues, gaining recognition on like every media outlet, and now she may be a time traveler. Social media blew up with the time travel theories when a 19th century photo surfaced that features Greta, or at least someone who looks just like her. It's true, the resemblance is astounding, so is this a case of time traveling, adventures, or just a common gene pool? Well, firstly, the situation of the photo doesn't actually suit Thunberg's environmental initiatives. The photo was taken in 1898, and the 3 children featured in it are sifting for gold, like Greta would ever be seen next to a mine. According to the University of Washington Libraries, the photo was also taken in the Canadian Yukon Territory, far from Greta. Greta hasn't responded to the fanatics obsessed with the photo, and her silence only feeds the theories. Who knows, maybe she just has one of those faces, or maybe she was sent back to do more of her research. After all, Greta does seem to prove time and time again that she isn't your average teen. Number 8. A mummy loves some Adidas. Discovering a mummy is a pretty big deal in itself, but discovering one with some pretty sweet kicks? One of the most unique and oldest pairs of shoes were discovered when a Mongolian mummy was unearthed. Her body was found in the Altai Mountains in Mongolia, and on her feet were a peculiar pair of shoes. They looked like like trendy Adidas shoes. Now they aren't actually Adidas, but they do feature the signature striped style of the shoe. After the restoration, it was revealed that they were actually a pair of knee-high boots with a striped black and red pattern. They also featured decorated buckles and leather soles. Our ancient fashionista also carried with her a clutch bag, mirror, comb, a knife, and a saddle with the remains of a horse. So lots to do. Researchers estimate that she died due to a blow to the head. Interesting. I know, this may have taken the wind out of your sails, but considering they appear so similar to today's designs, could it be that she might have gotten her inspiration from a distant traveler? A traveler who sported remarkable striped leather shoes and inspired the 1,000-year-old seamstress? Number 7. The Philadelphia survivor. The Philadelphia experiment is perhaps one of the most famous urban legends / conspiracy theories / actual historical event. For context, the Philadelphia experiment is an alleged military experiment that was carried out by the US Navy. In 1943, the USS Eldridge allegedly was made invisible and teleported from Pennsylvania to Virginia, either through time or parallel universe. What's the difference really? The story actually originated in 1955 when ex-merchant marine Carl M. Allen claimed to witness the event. He sent a book full of handwritten annotations to prove it, though it might be a hoax. Who knows? Did this actually happen? Who knows? But the movie definitely did, and it did nothing to help the conspiracy theories circling the world. But a man named Alfred Bielek found the film incredibly life-changing, as while watching it, he realized who he actually was, the lone survivor of the experiment. After seeing the 1988 film, Bielek's memories came flooding back, and he was actually Ed Cameron, and he had been born in 1916. So if this was real, it ticks all the boxes. Parallel universes, time travel, aliens, Philadelphia, science. Number 6. The Missing Hotel. This one gives me like Howl's Moving Castle vibes. Could be because I watched it recently for like the 12th time, so I don't know. But a building that's there 1 minute and then gone the next? I don't know. A couple traveling Europe had a unique experience, one they will never forget despite history seeming to. This story was featured on a TV series called Strange But True. Two couples headed off to Spain in the 1970s to live their best lives, but time travel wasn't on the itinerary. They were on their way from England, passing through France when they decided to stop and search for accommodations. Everywhere in Montélimar was packed save one place that was simply labeled hotel. They got a room that was tremendously old-fashioned with no glass in the windows and no phone. But it was the breakfast the next morning that shocked them. The other guests were dressed in like outdated clothing, and their breakfast only came out to 19 francs, which was way lower than what they thought. Hey, that's a win. They took tons of pictures of the vintage hotel and planned on returning next time they were in Europe. But the hotel disappeared. When they looked for the hotel again, it was no longer there, and no locals knew what the heck they were talking about. Even eerier, their photographs did not develop, like it had all been a glitch. Number 5. The bridge opening. Next up, we have this picture. See if you can spot the one who is out of place. Found him? In case you missed it, we are talking about the gent dressed in the all too familiar type of hipster style. He sticks out like a sore thumb with his thick black glasses, graphic t-shirt, and what looks to be some kind of hooded cardigan. This photo blew up across time travel enthusiast forums, he's the ultimate hipster. The location of the photo was at the reopening of the Southport Bridge in Goldbridge, British Columbia in 1941. He also looks to be the youngest guy in the photo. Strange considering he would have been enlisted in the Canadian Army at that point. Correct me if I'm wrong. So why is such a young circa 2010 sporting gent standing at the Southport Bridge? Could it be he was sent back to document the event and was accidentally documented himself? Number 4. Andrew Carlssin. This next one is for all my Game Stoppers out there who love that Robin Hood story. I did too. I really did. It sounds like Andrew Carlssin pulled a Biff from Back to the Future though. Police arrested the 44-year-old in 2003 when he was somehow able to turn $800 into $350 million over 2 weeks. That's the damn dream, man. Authorities believe that he must have had insider help, which according to Andrew wasn't exactly untrue. Andrew told the court that he was actually a time traveler from the year 2256, and that is how he knew. Obviously, who the heck would believe that ridiculous excuse? But wait, it gets weirder. Andrew disappeared without a trace. A month later, a mysterious benefactor paid $1 million buyout to get him out. On April 2nd, Andrew was supposed to meet with his lawyer, but he had entirely disappeared without a trace. No evidence of his existence could be found before the year 2002. Andrew, can you come back and just tell me how you did that? That'd be great, you know? Anyways, number 3, put your phone away. When I go to my next concert, there is one thing I really hope I don't see. People watching the whole thing through their phones while they're at a live concert. It just bothers me so much. Maybe do it once to commemorate it, but not the entire time, dude. you know? Someone should have said that to this time traveler in the background of Mike Tyson's 1994 match with Peter McNeely. Check this out. Yup, right in the background is a smartphone. Obviously, right? I still remember my mom having like a tiny screen dial phone well into like 2001. There was no way what looks to be a Galaxy phone would be around back then. Debunk this photo if you want, but if that is indeed a time traveler who was sent back, dude, time and place. Number 2, the Nazca Astronaut. Out of all the items on this list, this is the largest example of time travel in history by sheer size. The Nazca lines are located 250 miles south of Lima, Peru, and feature over 70 massive depictions of animals that can only be seen from the sky. But the one we are talking about is definitely either a sign for aliens or time travel. Among the 70 images, there's a strange humanoid figure that looks remarkably similar to an astronaut. Some of the designs from the geoglyphs measure around 30 miles, and experts have no idea how or why these drawings were created with such precision. The astronaut is the strangest of them all. Kinda looks like not only an astronaut, but it looks like it's waving, you know? Weird. Was this an homage to a strange spaceman who came traveling and visited the people of Peru? I personally wouldn't be surprised. And last but not least, Edgar Allan Poe. This last and final one, I have to thank Olivia for like helping me dive down this rabbit hole because it really is convincing. I'm fully on board. So is she. So here we go. Edgar Allan Poe has to have been a time traveler, or maybe he still is. Either way, he must have had some sixth sense. Okay, so first off, he predicted the future. 46 years after Edgar published his first novel called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket in 1838, something weird happened. At one point in the book, their ship, Grampus, became stranded without food or water after a mutiny and must resort to desperate measures. The crew draws straws to see who would be sacrificed for sustenance. A boy named Richard Parker lost the deal. 46 years later, in 1884, the exact thing happens with the exception that the boat was a sinking yacht. 4 men were set adrift and forced to do the same thing, and guess the name of the boy who died! Richard Parker. Example 1. Example 2, 1840, Poe penned the story called The Businessman Who Endures a Violent Life After a Head Injury. He was hit in the head as a young kid, causing an injury to his frontal lobe, which Poe seemed to entirely understand in intricate detail. But the first time behavioral changes caused by this kind of injury were able to be studied didn't come until 1848. An actual neurologist, Eric Altschuler, wrote, and I quote, "There's dozens of symptoms and he knows every single one. There's everything in that story, we've hardly learned anything more. It's so exact that it's just weird, and it's like he had a time machine." Unquote. Point 3. Who is the figure who visits Poe's grave every year and puts a rose on it? Perhaps Poe is coming back to honor a past life. After all, why is a raven like a writing desk? Because Poe wrote on both.
Coming into number 10, we have W Man. What does the W stand for? William? Wallace? Women? Oaxaca? Oh, only our British audience will get this, but I really miss Oaxaca. Get me some sweet potato tacos immediately! Tacos probably weren't a thing in 1940s Canada when this picture was taken, although I bet Mr. W has eaten a few because look at him, he's a blatant time traveler hipster. A lot of people dub this guy the time traveling hipster, and he does certainly look like he would be better placed working in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, or Ubisoft. The picture was taken at the opening of South Fork Bridge, but it got the world's attention in 2010 at a photo exhibit. The guy is wearing sunnies and looks like he is holding a far more modern DSLR camera. Sadly, it does turn out that the letter on his shirt is actually an M for the Montreal Maroons, who played in the NHL from 1924 to 1938. So that being said, he could just be trying to blend in. Although to be honest with you, the rest of him's pretty standout. What do you guys think? Is he a time traveler? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below.
In our number 9 spot, we have actor Rupert Grint. There is a Scottish painter by the name of Sir David Wilkie who lived in the 18th and 19th centuries and whom looked very similar to a very famous actor today. Fans of Rupert Grint, who played the infamous Ron Weasley in the Harry Potter franchise, were shocked to see a portrait of David and how he looks extremely similar to Rupert. Could it be possible that Rupert is really just a time traveler who has traveled to this time to capture our hearts and souls on the screen? A lot of people think so, as you cannot deny that the two look quite similar. However, personally I think this is one painting I disagree with, as I don't think they look enough alike for this to be the same person. I know that some people share a theory that time travelers change certain features on their face so that they're not recognizable, but something makes me think that this theory is a bit of a stretch and truly isn't the same person. I don't know. If we were to believe that time travelers exist, of course. And we do. In our number 8 spot, we have Keanu Reeves. Okay, if I could get on board with any celebrity being a time traveler, it would definitely be Keanu Reeves, because he is just magical. Do you agree? There's something about him that seemingly makes him likable to literally everyone on the planet. I truly wonder if there's anyone who dislikes him. So he is either magical or a time traveler, but that would also make him magical, so he's probably both. There is a very mysterious painting from the 1500s of a man that has a striking resemblance to Keanu Reeves. This painting has made its rounds online and has convinced a lot of people that he must be a time traveler. This is definitely one of the paintings on this list that truly feels like it could be real because of how similar Keanu looks to this man. The thing is though, Keanu seems to have a lot of people throughout history that looks like him, including King Charlemagne around 800 AD, as well as the 20th century French actor Paul Mountet. So it's because of all of these possible time traveler sightings that the internet is convinced that Keanu is immortal. And I'm here for it. I love him.
Spotted at the beach at number 7. So this picture here is a lovely snap of British war workers escaping the perils of their job for one much needed sunny day in 1943. The image was shared on Twitter and the poster was asking people to identify where the beach was. It turns out that the beach in question was Taured Beach in Cornwall, but more than the stretch of sand was identified here. It seemed that eagle-eyed viewers spotted a man on a smartphone in the middle of the picture. He could just be looking at something in his hand, but doesn't it look like he's on his phone? Honestly, to me it seems like he is so checking his phone. To me, it looks like he's just received a really confusing text from Bay and he's not sure how to respond. So phones feature heavily on this list, so do prepare yourself for more and even more shocking examples. But before we get to that, let me pose to you that Michael Jackson isn't actually dead, he's time traveling. Find out why I've drawn this conclusion at number 6. YouTube account Fact5 compiled a number of pictures that have shown the king of pop popping up through history. So weird that this was never spotted until he died. It's like he's out there somewhere changing the future. Here's a painting of Michael from like, let's say the late 1700s, and then there's this Egyptian statue of him. Right. Roll up for another iPhone. This one comes 60 to 70ish years ahead of schedule. We have Henry Fonda's touchscreen at number 5. This clip is from the 1948 John Wayne movie Fort Apache, and there is a scene in which the character Lieutenant Colonel Owen Thursday, played by Henry Fonda, whips out his iPhone and goes over a list of names with his daughter Philadelphia, played by Shirley Temple. Check it out and tell me what you think. To me, he's holding that just like a slim iPhone X, although I feel like this is probably just a notebook. But it looks a lot like an iPhone. I don't know. What do you think? Coming into number 4, we have a time traveling car. This time traveling car has totally vexed the internet time and time again. This footage was allegedly caught on a Russian police officer's dash cam and features what can only be described as a time traveling car. Is that the DeLorean? The footage starts as the car is turning left. We can see the traffic at a standstill, and then on the right, all of a sudden a car comes from nowhere. Like, seriously, nowhere. It's definitely the Doctor and Marty McFly. Honestly, let me slow this down for you and you can watch again because this is so crazy. Like, where did it come from? Time traveling! Uploaded by Rose Adams on YouTube, this video has been watched over 1 million times, and by the looks of the comments, a lot of people are just as confused as me. Okay, the teleporting or time traveling car did have me pretty convinced, although I am less sure about this one. At number 3, we have a time traveling hero. So this video was uploaded in September 2012 and has been watched a staggering 11 million times. In it, we see a super fast time traveling superhero come out of nowhere and rescue a guy on a motorbike who looks like he was about to be killed by an oncoming truck. Time traveler, teleporter, basically the same thing, right? Well, it turns out that actually this is a hoax, a viral marketing campaign for a Chinese game called Dragon Totem Girl. Wow. Okay, that may have been a hoax, but this seems very legit. We have this chatty factory worker at number 2. Watch out, here come the girls. This footage was shot in 1938 and is thought to be of factory workers leaving for the day. There they all are in their 1930s looking clothing, behaving as I would expect, until this lady comes along. Now to me, she very much looks like she's holding an early 2000s flip phone. I remember those. So good. Something really satisfactory about flipping a phone. Seriously though, look at her. What else could she be doing? She seems to be engaging with the phone as if she's talking to someone, and she's smiling but not at the woman next to her. According to a video that Danny made earlier about time travelers, in 2013, a woman came forward in the comments section of the video to say that she was the great-granddaughter of this woman. She says her name was Gertrude. She said that Gertrude was actually part of a science and tech experiment to test a wireless phone, although, like, really, there isn't that much scientific evidence to back that up at all. And since then, the comments section has been axed. What does this mean? Finally, coming into number 1, we have something strange happening in the background of a 1995 Mike Tyson fight. Whoa, 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 absolute smartphone alert. So this was a fight between Tyson and Peter McNeely that went down in Vegas in 1995. Yes, there were mobile phones in 95, but not smartphones. Smartphones only entered the market in and around 2007. Before that, phone cameras were total garbage. This clearly looks like a white Android phone from after 2014 with at least a 12 megapixel camera. We could only dream of 12 megapixels in the 90s. This footage is legit, and knowing our generation who can't be separated from their phones, if they were to time travel back to see a Mike Tyson fight, many people would be tempted to whip out their phones even if their time traveling was supposed to be a secret. Well, honestly, we caught you, mate.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Adidas shoes. Now, this is a famous case of supposed time travel. A couple of years ago, an ancient mummy was unearthed in Mongolia. Nothing was too off about the mummy, besides the fact that she wore shoes that looked like Adidas trainers. The shoes had red and black stripes on it. I personally don't see the resemblance with the shoes, but others are convinced that this body belongs to a time traveler. Upon analyzing the body further, they found that it belonged to a woman who died from a blow to the head. It's theorized that this woman may have indeed have been a time traveler and was killed after her identity was leaked. What else could explain the fact that this woman was found wearing Adidas? Just a little tip, if you're going time traveling, don't wear Nike or Adidas.
Coming into number 9, we have Charlie Chaplin's time traveling extra. Take a look at this footage from Charlie Chaplin's 1928 movie Circus. If this footage was from the modern day, the first thing you would notice is that it's in black and white. You wouldn't pay any attention to the woman who is clearly on her mobile phone in the background walking behind a zebra. But this is 1928 and cell phones won't be readily available for another 70 so years. Even the early cell phones of the 1980s were chunky. This woman is clearly time traveling from the future, and judging by the size of her phone, I would say from the next millennium. This time traveler is caught on camera all the time. We have Nicolas Cage at number 8. Fun fact, Nicolas Cage has the same birthday as me. Second fun fact, did you know that the Academy Award and Golden Globe Award winning actor Nicolas Cage is indeed a time traveler? No? Well, he is. The actor uses a personally developed style of performance that he calls nouveau shamanic, which, I mean, sure. Maybe it's something that he's developed across the ages, as it seems that the film legend is indeed a time traveler. He's also fulfilled a lot of roles in history. Here he is as Mexican Emperor Maximilian I of Habsburgo, and here he is as an unidentified man from Bristol, Tennessee in 1870. The actor was forced to publicly deny it on Letterman.
In our 7th spot, we have the hipster, another very popular photo that has been circulating online. So the photo contains a crowd of people in the 1940s at the reopening ceremony for the South Fork Bridge in British Columbia. Well, in this photo, everyone seems to be dressed up besides the man on the right hand side of the photo. Everyone else is in suits and top hats, and this tall man seems to be very out of place dressed like a hipster, hence why he was given that name. He can be seen sporting funky sunglasses, a graphic t-shirt, and of course is carrying a camera. Now, some believe that he is indeed a time traveler, whereas others have tried to debunk it. They claim that all the items he is seen wearing were available back in 1941 when the photo was taken. Either way, he looks pretty out of place. In our 6th spot, we have Greta Thunberg. I'm sure all of you have heard about Greta Thunberg, the young Swedish activist who is spreading the word about climate change. Well, there's a theory out there that Greta is actually a time traveler. This theory came to life after a photo of 3 children was uploaded to the internet. These children appeared to be at a gold mine on Dominion Creek in the Yukon. However, the one girl looks identical to Greta and is even wearing the same braided hairstyle. As a result, People believe that Greta is a time traveler sent from the future to save humanity before we completely destroy it. And then apparently she traveled back to 1898 to the Yukon before coming to the present moment. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Fentz legend. So this one is more of a legend, but either way it makes for a good time traveling story. So legend goes that there was a 30-year-old man named Rudolph Fentz who was hit and injured by a New York taxi in the 1950s. His pockets contained a copper token for beer, a bill for the care of a horse, and a letter from 1876 among other unusual items. Turns out that this man was a person who disappeared in 1876 at the age of 29. Like I mentioned before, this is apparently a legend that originated from a 1951 short story book. But others believe that this is actually a cover-up, and that Rudolph Fentz was a real man who was a time traveler. Making our way down the list at number 4, we have the beach time traveler. What's something you would do if you could time travel? Maybe stop a tragedy from happening, save someone's life, or just chill at the beach getting some rays. Because that last one is exactly what this time traveler did. A photo from September 1943 apparently shows British factory workers enjoying their break on the beach during the midst of wartime. Everyone is seen wearing bathing suits that fit the era. But right in the middle of the photo is a man in a brown suit, who honestly looks like Mr. Bean. This dude is also checking something that looks like a phone. Some even say that he's checking his time travel device. People were really weirded out about this man because he sticks out like a sore thumb. As a result, he has been deemed a time traveler. Coming in our 3rd spot, we have the film extra. In this next situation, a woman time traveled to be an extra in a Charlie Chaplin film. Or so it appears that way. In the 1928 film, a woman who appears to be taking a phone call can be seen crossing the screen. The video was in the behind the scenes footage from Chaplin's film, The Circus. The woman is in a long black coat and is holding something to her ear, which she is speaking into. Of course, in 1928 there were no cell phones, so how is this possible? 2 words: time travel. However, others believe that she is simply holding a hearing device to her ear, or that she's holding up her hand to shield her eyes from the sun. But that still doesn't explain why she appears to be talking to herself and holding the black rectangular object like a cell phone. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this one. In our 2nd spot, we have the Canadian man. Now, this photo is pretty odd. The photo is over 100 years old and shows a bunch of dressed up Canadians chilling on a hill. Another Canadian time traveler. At first glance, everything appears to be normal, until you take a closer look. On the left side of the photo, there's a man on the hill that seems out of place. I mean, the men are dressed up in top hats and suits, and he's just chilling there in a t-shirt and shorts. In fact, the 2 men beside him are giving him a look like, who's this guy? As a result, people have referred to him as the surfing time traveler. Like seriously, he seems so out of place. But also, why would you choose that as your time traveling outfit? Like I'd pick something cool, like a leather jacket, you know, look all cool and edgy. And in our number 1 spot, we have the cell phone. Another time traveler caught using a cell phone. So if you're gonna go back in time, don't bring your phone. A film from 1938 shows a woman talking on a device that looks just like a cell phone. Again, how is that possible when the first mobile phone wasn't available to buy until around the 80s? After this video made headlines, a YouTube user came forward claiming that the lady in the video was her great-grandmother. She apparently asked her grandmother, whose name is Gertrude Smith, about the video, and she said that she really was using a cell phone. Apparently, the phones were a prototype developed by a communications factory in Massachusetts. Gertrude and 5 other women were given the phones to test out for a week. But it's still hard to believe that this company was way ahead of the times. When mobile phones were ready, they were big, not the small ones that fit comfortably in your hand as seen in the video. So it really does make us wonder, what's real and what's not? Honestly, it seems hard to believe, and Gertrude Smith seems like a made-up name. And it was never even confirmed if what this user said was true. So it may just be that time travel is real and Gertrude was not too sly and got caught in action.
In our number 10 spot, we have the woman on her cell phone. There is a painting by Ferdinand George Waldmüller from 1860 called The Expected One. This painting shows a woman walking through what appears to be a trail while holding an object which looks an awful lot lot like a cell phone. She also is seemingly transfixed by what she's looking at, similar to how people look at their cell phones when scrolling or sending a text today. People have looked at this painting and have perceived this woman as a possible time traveler, and hey, I see it. What else could that object be? What else could a woman of that time be holding? What could be as small as a cell phone and also something that she could be so focused on? I'm sure there are quite a few answers to this, but whatever. We are going to say that it's clearly a cell phone and she's clearly a time traveler. The end. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to smash that like button as it will really help us out.
Moving on to number 9, we have The Fight. A video of Mike Tyson's fight from 1995 went viral online for containing supposed proof of a time traveler. In the background of the video, you can see a man who appears to be recording or taking photos of the fight on an iPhone or another modern camera phone. The fight was in 1995 and camera phones were not sold until the 2000s. As a result, many people are convinced that the man in the audience is a time traveler, who I guess is a fan of Mike Tyson. What also tripped people out is the fact that the main cameras used in the 90s were the ones with the lenses in the middle. This camera is clearly lacking that. However, others believe that the man is not a time traveler and in fact was just taking a photo on a camera known as the Casio QV10A. Even though it's been potentially debunked, there are people out there that don't believe it for a second. In our 8th spot, we have the Mohawk Man. It's like, where's Waldo with these photos? Except you're looking for the person that doesn't belong. So this next image is apparently from 1905 and shows workers and a banana boat delivering goods. However, near the boat there appears to be someone standing there in a white t-shirt rocking a Mohawk style haircut, which is a very unusual haircut for that time period. The men in the photo are wearing suits and top hats and have fancy mustaches and look well dressed, whereas he's there in a plain t-shirt. Due to the fact that he looks out of place, people have pegged him as a time traveler. He kind of reminds me of Robert De Niro from Taxi Driver though.
In our number 7 spot, we have a man and his cell phone. Here we have yet another mysterious painting where this time a man is holding an object that is seemingly looking like a cell phone. I don't know. It looks like a cell phone. It seemingly is a cell phone. This is an oil painting made by a painter named Pieter de Hooch from the year 1670. Some people have said that this man was a messenger and that it was a letter that holding not a phone, and that seems definitely more likely. However, this cell phone theory is way more fun. Imagine if people had cell phones in those days. They would have definitely been called witches, as this was around the time where the witch trials were taking place all around the world. So it's probably accurate to say that if he was holding a cell phone, he would have probably been more discreet about it, or maybe not. Perhaps he's a cheeky kind of guy and loves to play with fire. In any case, I personally think that it looks more like a phone that he's holding than a letter, so I'm gonna say this one is definitely a time traveler. In our number 6 spot, we have Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone has been trending online recently because people believe that he could be a potential time traveler. Why, you may ask? Well, it's because of a painting of a man called Pope Gregory IX approving the Vatican decretals. You have to admit, this guy looks like he is Sylvester Stallone. The resemblance is uncanny. If this is not Sylvester, then it has to be someone directly related to him by blood, right? That is the only conclusion. Okay, but in all seriousness, if this guy is not related to him and this is not him, then this is a very good example of how it is possible to have a twin somewhere else in the world. Possibly on a different time frame, but it is still possible that someone else could exist in the history of the world that looks just like you. Such a cool thought. In our number 5 spot, we have Nicolas Cage. Okay guys, here is another one. Man, this list is actually kind of blowing my mind. There are way too many paintings that look exactly like famous actors. This one looks like actor Nicolas Cage. I am a massive fan of the National Treasure movies, so I definitely have a sweet spot for good old Nicolas. But also, he encouraged Johnny Depp to become an actor, so bless you, Nick. You gave us a gift we cannot ever repay you for. Anyways, there is a painting of a Mexican emperor, Maximiliano of Habsburgo, I hope I didn't butcher that, and and Sir Nick looks like his doppelganger. But let's be real, he probably is. The only thing is people seem to say that Nick looks like he's a lot of people from different time periods, so honestly, who knows? He does have a very mysterious quality to him, so perhaps that is why people are quick to think that he might be, you know, a time traveler. In our number 4 spot, we have Jack Gleason. This is the only one on this list that is not a painting but just needed an honorable mention. Honestly, this was a hard list to research, so, you know, just love me. Jack Gleason, one of the stars of Game of Thrones that played the infamous Joffrey, looks surprisingly a lot like a statue of the Roman Emperor Caligula. Almost identical. If you have watched Game of Thrones, then you would know that his character is the king for a while, and what a terrible king he was. Perhaps he had some practice from once being a Roman emperor. Some say yes. This statue is too much like him that he must be a time traveler. Either that or he's immortal and he's been alive since this time. In our number 3 spot, we have Michael Jackson. This is a really interesting one. People think that it's possible that Michael Jackson was a time traveler. Okay, if Michael Jackson was a time traveler, then maybe he isn't actually dead and he just traveled to another time. Michael is known for being someone who loved art, so it's possible that he even styled one of his looks based off of a painting that weirdly looks like him, but truly it is rather strange that this painting really looks like him. Perhaps he actually traveled back in time in a time machine and someone painted him and that is how this painting exists? Ooh, what if instead of being dead, he's trapped in the painting? Like what happens in the movie The Witches, based on Roald Dahl's book. It's fun to imagine scenarios like this. Anyways, there's no denying the resemblance and the similarities in their fashion choices. Pretty strange. In our number 2 spot, we have Peter Dinklage. If you do not know who Peter Dinklage is, then I can only assume that you haven't viewed one of the greatest television series of all time, Game of Thrones. Oh, and also Elf. What a movie. Anyways, Peter is one of the most iconic stars from Game of Thrones. Probably the fan favorite, besides Arya, Sansa, Jon Snow. Okay, never mind, there were too many great characters. There is a painting of a man that looks just like Peter though. The painting is called The Portrait of Sebastian de Mora by a man named Diego Velázquez. It was painted between 1644 to 1645. It truly looks just like Peter, so I understand why people look at this painting and immediately think it's him. Is everyone a time traveler in Hollywood? It feels like yes. In our number 1 spot, we have Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg, the creator of Facebook, has definitely been called a robot, an alien, a shapeshifter, and now I'm learning that people believe him to be a possible time traveler, and it is because of a painting of the King of Spain, Philip IX. The painting was said to have been done in 1624 by a man named Diego Velázquez. I may be butchering his name, but hey, I tried. He looks like an awful lot like Mark. Some same droopy eyes, long face, hair color, nose, and also possibly hair texture. Kinda hard to make out, but it looks like it. The only thing is, the king appears to have bigger lips, but who knows, maybe the artist did that. Or perhaps Mark had a lip reduction. Anyways, not sure I'm on board with this theory fully, but the robot theory might have some solid arguments.